Good morning, Arabella, and good morning to our viewers. Katie Molefe, a central figure in all of what is unfolding here at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Why? We heard testimony earlier in these proceedings from Dumisani Kumalo, head of crime intelligence, who named Katie Molefe and Vusumuzi Kat Matlala as being the leaders of an alleged Big Five criminal cartel operating in South Africa. The events of the 6th of December are key and will take central focus today. We'll tease out some of the detail as to how that arrest went down. As Ziyanda Ngcobo told us earlier in these proceedings, the moments of that particular day were intense. It was a standoff essentially that unfolded to the point where police themselves felt threatened. And this was some of the testimony we heard here at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Katie Molefe is a central figure, really important. We know that he's out on bail already. Today, in fact, which is a Wednesday, it's one of the days where he has to go and report in terms of his bail conditions to the Morningside police station. And his matter will be reappearing in court on the 19th of November. Ziyanda Ngcobo, today then incredibly important as more of the details around the arresting officers, the clashes with the DPCI, including feeling threatened by a police helicopter that was hovering very low over Katie Molefe's house on that 6th December, which was operated by one officer who said that he had got his instructions directly from the DPCI, a senior police officer in that regard. So re-sketch for us the events of that day and why it's so central to what we're expecting to unfold here today.
It's going to be very critical to hear from these three South African police officers who, unlike witnesses A and B, are not in safe houses, but were there on the day that they had a takedown operation, as it was referred to on the 6th of December last year. You've mentioned the chopper that doesn't belong to the South African Police Service, but actually came from another law enforcement agency that was hovering over Katiso Katie Molefe's home. So low was this chopper hovering that even witness A had actually given feedback to his commanders who were monitoring the operation from a different location that they may actually need backup. Now, this is a very important issue because it speaks to how two law enforcement agencies, being the DPCI, otherwise known as the Hawks, and members of the South African Police Service almost drew guns on each other because of the volatility of that situation. You'll recall the testimony that was given by witnesses A and B was that they went to Katiso Katie Molefe's home. They claimed they correctly identified themselves, which becomes very critical because you'll remember that Hawks retired Hawks head Godfrey Lebia says the reason why he had sent Hawks officials to Katiso Katie Molefe's home was because he was told that there are people pretending to be Hawks members at Katiso Katie Molefe's home. So how did they identify themselves when they got there? They claimed that they identified themselves correctly, and then they undertook that search and seizure at Katiso Katie Molefe's home, where they were able to even retrieve documents related to that tender with Transnet and QTech, where those springs that would ordinarily cost 3 Rand, 4 Rand were inflated to around 151 Rand. And this is why then Aman Swart was mistakenly identified as the whistleblower of that particular Transnet tender. So the arrest, that takedown operation at Katiso Katie Molefe's home is very critical in understanding the extent to which perhaps there is that infiltration of the South African Police Service by these criminal networks, in particular the Big Five cartel, because we'll get another perspective from these three police officers about how they went about this operation, what was the planning behind it. We were told that the members of the Political Killings Task Team went on the ground on that day. To what extent extent were they supposed to go insofar as that search and seizure? Because we're told that they'd gotten a court order a day prior on the 5th of December. And when they did get to the house, at which point then did things get volatile? You'll also remember the testimony from witnesses A and B about how heavily armed Katiso Katie Molefe and another man believed to be his bodyguard, Lehasa Malloy, were. In fact, they had to first disarm them and neutralize the situation, as those are the exact words that were used by witnesses A and B, in order to be able to then begin their work. And by and large, we were told that Molefe was compliant. So what is it that triggered the arrival of these Hawks officials? Who would have made that call? What was the discussion between these two teams? And eventually, as we know, Molefe was not taken to a local police station, but taken to Pretoria Central, which is also when we saw the entrance now of the Deputy National Police Commissioner, Shedrick Sibiya, who had told Major General Richard Shibiri that he was unhappy to hear that Molefe was not taken to a local police station and what they had done was not good. So this arrest also forms part of the unraveling of this so-called Big Five network and their tentacles within the criminal justice system.
It is certainly going to be a fascinating day of testimonies, Ziyanda. As you say, they're not testifying in a camera, and they'll provide important detail as to what unfolded on that day and why why two key units of law enforcement in South Africa were in what was tantamount to a standoff. We also know that Katie Molefe's nephew, Lucky Molefe, is still on the run, and he's central to the procurement of those implements in the TFR, the Transnet Freight Rail procurement process, which led to QTech making that whistleblowing declaration to them, which led to the murder of Aman Swat. So all of this unfolding today, all eyes on the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry here in Tshwane. Back to you, Arabile.